welcome everyone to another episode of Just Saying Football with Jack and Sean. I'm your host Sean Gann alongside my partner Jack Nicholas. We're here to bring you news, notes, weekly updates, and game analysis of your favorite teams from around the league. Another chance, go check out our website justsayingfootball.com. Follow us on Instagram at JustSaying, no GWJS for article and video updates. And don't forget to get us in your ears on Spotify at Just Saying Football. And before I forget, get us in on Discord. The bets have been hitting. You can find us there at Just Saying Football as well. Link in the bio on Instagram. Buddy, week 5's in. Both of our teams got a win. How you feeling? The surprise win for the Giants on the road in Seattle.
Yeah, big win. Definitely was a little nervous when I saw Geno running up for that big 40-yard run. But, man, the Giants, they got it done. The special teams was great. The defense, 6 sacks. And, you got to be feeling good as well. Your team is undefeated right now after beating the Jets in London. So how you feeling about that?
Feeling pretty good. Aaron Rodgers only had 8 interceptions on the Vikings, and we walk away with 3. Feeling very good right now. Every one of our starting defensive backs has an interception already on the season, so we're doing something
so
right
much for that weak Viking secondary haters.
I know, honestly, you guys can all sit down. But all right, we got some teams on a bye this week. We got the Minnesota Vikings we were just talking about, Kansas City Chiefs, Los Angeles Rams, and Miami Dolphins. So for all you fantasy owners out there, obviously make sure to adjust your lineups. Some news and notes of this week. The big one being Robert Saleh has been fired from his position as head coach of the New York Jets. You think this is going to help or hinder them as they go forward?
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be easy this week. Definitely, I feel like we're in for a transition week in prime time for the Jets at home, division opponent. But, this just gives Aaron Rodgers free range. If this is his last year, so be it. Give him the 13 games, call his own plays, and see where they go. Garrett Wilson, we'll talk about him later. But, they finally feel like they connected last week. And now you just see, bang, Robert Saleh's gone.
Yeah, let's see how that keeps going. Nico Collins tweaked his hamstring last week. He's unable to return in the game Sunday against the Bills. He's considered week to week. That offense looks great. We're going to get to them in a little bit. Rashee Rice is hitting the season-ending IR, which is sad news considering that it seemed relatively positive as it could be last week, that it was maybe going to be short-term. Both Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones were banged up in their game this London. Jones is listed as week to week as the Vikings have their bye. Aaron Rodgers is most likely going to start on Monday Night Football. David Njoku ankle injury made him miss week 5. He could suit up in week 6. It's still debatable. Some good news for the Browns, which is few and far between at the moment. Yeah. Nick Chubb is back at practice. Don't expect him to be playing anytime soon unless the Browns start to rattle off wins, though, considering the gruesome knee injury that he suffered last season. But just cool to see him back at practice, as always.
Yeah.
Josh Allen appeared to have a concussion in the game, but they didn't take him out at all. He did end up continuing playing. However, a lot of people on social media thought that maybe this was questionable. And what did the Bills do? It seems like he's going to be starting, though, on Monday as well. And then finally, Derek Carr had an oblique injury, did leave the game. He will be missing the next few weeks. Could open up the door for Spencer Rattler. Sorry, here, one more. And Devon Achane had a concussion in week 5. His timetable is still to be determined throughout the week. So lots of injuries. We're already, in week 6. Season's flying by already. Feels like it's going by too fast, buddy.
Dude, week 6, this is when it starts to, like you're saying, this is when it feels like we're in fast-forward mode because, you're looking at these teams, and as we're going through our script, you can definitely see that some of these records are starting to shape out, and, we'll go with the ones with the biggest margins and start with our blowout. So kick us off, man.
Absolutely. We have the Houston Texans making their way to New England and take on the Patriots. The Texans are favored in this one by -7 with an over-under here of 37.5. First thoughts on this, obviously Drake May is getting the start this week at quarterback, so it's something to keep in mind. How are you feeling in this one?
Yeah, Drake May, whoever is out there, I don't think they're going to be able to beat the Texans this week. The Texans definitely got a dominating win against the Bills last week. That was just enough for me to look at them and take them as my pick for sure this week.
Yeah, I have to lock them in as well. I was really disappointed with the Patriots. I thought that everyone has been just beating up on the Dolphins, and all of a sudden the Dolphins come in, they get the win at home. They're really close to getting the win there with Jalen Polk, the rookie, who I'm excited to see maybe with Drake May and how that connection blossoms. But I got to just give it right now to the Texans. They're just playing much better football. There's nothing slowing down this offense. They got the huge win the last 2 weeks. Moving this right along, we have the Cleveland Browns making their way to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. The Eagles are favored in this one by -8.5, over under here of 43.5. Now, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are expected to be back in this one. I'm locking in the Eagles. This Browns team's just a dumpster fire right now. It just feels like we're right back to 2011 where the Jets suck, the Browns suck right now. the Watson trade is not just one of the worst trades, if not the worst trade in the NFL. It's one of the worst trades in NFL history. It's just not looking like it. I don't think that there's anything that can salvage this team. This is a get-right game for Philly.
Yeah, going to be a big week for Saquon. Definitely I feel like Philly goes up early after the bye week. You have to think that Jalen Hurts cleans up all these turnovers we've been seeing on a consistent basis. So give me Philly at home. They're trying to go 3-2. They're not trying to go under 500 right now.
Yeah, no, not at the moment. And with the way that the NFC East is going with Washington, they're for sure not trying to fall under 500. All right, move this right along. We have an NFC South showdown when the Atlanta Falcons make their way to Carolina to take on the Panthers. Falcons are favored in this one by -6 with an over-under here of 47.5. Potential back-to-back divisional win games for the Falcons. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I know. We talk a lot of trash about Kirk Cousins, but it's hard to after the 500-yard win. No quarterback still thrown over 400 yards except for him last week. So you got to think, the offense for the Falcons firing on all cylinders right now, and they've been able to win close games with their defense. So give me them against the Panthers on the road, familiar division opponent, not a lot of travel.
Yep, I'm going to absolutely lock in the Falcons as well. I think what we're seeing from Kirk Cousins is much better than what we saw from the first couple weeks. Drake London was getting a lot more involved. Kyle Pitts was getting involved. This offense is just absolutely fluid. Want to see a lot more Bijan Robinson, and I'm not just saying that as a fantasy owner, but as a fan of football, just because of how good he is. Moving this along, we're into our meh categories already. We'd love to see that. Jacksonville Jaguars make their way to Chicago to take on the Bears. Now, this is in London. It's going to be in Tottenham, so obviously it's not in Chicago. 9:30 a.m. game. Bears are favored in this one by -2.5. Over-under here of 44.5. What are your thoughts going into this one?
Yeah, not much to think about the Jaguars except they got a really much-needed win last week. And, when you look at the Bears, they got Carolina last week. But DJ Moore, shout out to him. He was going off a little bit last week. And, I got to say, I don't know what's going on with Jacksonville. Travis Etienne, you have Tank Bigsby going out there and absolutely dominating, 13 for 101 and 2 touchdowns last week. I truly think Etienne could get traded if Jacksonville falls to 1-5. But I am going to take them this week. They played with such a sense of urgency last week.
Yeah, Jacksonville had to last week. Going into that win list, you just knew they had to do something. A lot of expectations, especially after they locked in Trevor Lawrence. I'm going with Chicago in this one. The main reason I talked a little bit about it last week, but there's a chance here that the Bears can get out to a pretty good record, potentially 6-3 in the next few weeks. Because coming up after the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is a winnable game, they got the Commanders. I'm looking at the Commanders already to most likely win that game. Then you get the Cardinals and the Patriots. So if you're able to jump out here to 4-2, you take the loss against Commanders, you rip off 2 more. All of a sudden you're 6-4. Not too bad when you're looking at Week 11 against the Packers. So I'm going to lock in the Bears. Loved what we saw out of DJ Moore last week. 2 touchdowns. Caleb Williams. Let's see if he can grow a little bit more in this next game. All right. Moving this along, Arizona Cardinals making their way to Green Bay to take on the Packers. Now, Packers are favored in this one by -5.5. This is a pretty big spread, 49.5. Arizona's coming off of this massive comeback win against the 49ers. I believe they were down more than 10 points going into the fourth quarter. How are you feeling in this one?
Yeah, we were talking about it a little off camera. It's hard to assess the Cardinals right now because they are out there winning these close games, but they didn't have to travel too much last week, and it was a division game, and I do think that when it comes down to it, the Packers at home are hard to beat. We saw the Vikings beat them, but that was a tough game. They play well at home. I think the Cardinals played to the wire last week. Packers seem to be in control. I'll take them at home. I like my guy Jaden Reed for a touchdown this week. I really think especially James Conner could score. There's going to be a lot of offense in this game. That's why there's a 49-point over-under. I think I'd take the over on this one too.
I'm looking at this game, and I absolutely love what we've been seeing from Arizona this year, and specifically Kyler Murray, just given everything, all of his ups and downs throughout his career right now. And I still stand by. I feel like they need a true wide receiver, too, that will really take this offense to the next level this could be. All that being said, all the positives for Arizona, I got to give it to the Packers in this one. They played a great game against the Rams, and despite the late-game pushback from Arizona that ultimately won the game, we did see a late-game pushback from the Rams, and the Packers' defense didn't give in when they needed to, and the offense got it done when they needed to. So I expect them to continue to be able to do that. I'll lock in Green Bay as much as it pains me to say. Moving this along, another NFC South showdown, the games everybody loves. Tampa Bay Buccaneers making their way to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Bucks are favoring this one by -2.5. Over under here of 42. And this Tampa team lost kind of of a fault to their own in that Thursday night game. They couldn't control the ball on the offensive end in within the 2-minute warning, which costed them. Then they lose in OT. Saints, though, out without Derek Carr with this oblique injury, potentially Spencer Rattler getting the start. We don't know at this point.
Yeah, and you got to question what the Saints are doing. They seem to be able to keep up with Kansas City for a little bit there, but obviously, they really struggled. Now they're getting to play at the Dome. They're 2-2. They do not want to fall into a sense of being 500. I think that is a lot of pressure when you're playing a team like the Bucks that has played historically well in New Orleans the last few years. Our guy Rashid Shaheed, touchdown last week, hit the best bet in the Discord. If you're not in there, get in there. But we got some great offense again in this one. It's a low over under at 42. I will say that this has to be a good Baker game. He only threw 180 yards last week, but he did throw 3 touchdowns. Like you said, controlling. I think that Tampa's got a lot figured out right now. I'm going to take them on the road.
I'm absolutely going to go with Tampa Bay as well. Spencer Rattler and this team, they might be able to put something together, put some points on the board. They still have some great pieces. This is, still a very good Tampa team. I think that they have an identity offensively and defensively. Last week was just one of those games. The run game was absolutely shut down, but Kirk Cousins threw 509 yards on you with 4 touchdowns and the interception. So it's just like, it happens. So I expect Tampa Bay to bounce back in this one. I do like them to win it, absolutely. Moving this along, we got the AFC South matchup. The Indianapolis Colts make their way to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Colts are favored this one by -1. Over under here at 43.5. I'll stay away from this betting wise. Titans are coming back from the bye. How are you feeling in this one?
Yeah, and we looked at the Titans just a week ago. They got their win with Mason Rudolph against the Dolphins, who, as we know, are a little measly right now. The Colts look good with Joe Flacco enough for me. I'm going to stay away from this game. This is probably going to be a close one, -1 spread, but give me Joe Flacco on the road, and the Colts will be 3-3 by the end of the week.
Just for the fun of it, I'm going to go with the Titans, just to defer from you. Like, this is just like one of those like toss-up games. It's a -1 spread. Vegas doesn't know.
You do not like that -1. I can see it.
Right. The hope is, I feel like, as the Titans, you get that extra week of the bye, and you knew your opponent and who you're going to be facing. Supposedly, Brian Callahan does want to stick with Will Levis as their starting quarterback, which is fine, I guess. It's not what I would do. It's not what I would pick. But I'm not in the building. I'm not a professional coach for a reason, so what do I know? But I'll lock in the Titans just to defer from you in this one. Moving this along, AFC West showdown, a lot of divisional showdowns in this one, I'm realizing. The Los Angeles Chargers make their way to Denver to take on the Broncos. Chargers are favored in this one by -3 with an over-under here of 35.5. The Broncos are coming off of a massive, massive win last week. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so Broncos right now 3-2. That just doesn't look real right now with the way that they've played some of these weeks. But I mean, you got to give it to Sean Payton. They're at home. It's a tough place to play. I will say I'm liking that the Chargers have slowed down the last couple of games, but I do think they're going to have to bounce back. Big thing in week 5, week 6 area is you're really going to have to be able to get everything set up the right way. So I think that the Chargers are going to run the ball well enough to win this game.
I'm looking at this, and it's kind of been the same story for the last few years for the Denver Broncos. It just feels like incredible defense, but like a terrible, terrible offense to back it up that just like can't seem to move. Bo Nix has his best game of the season by far, completing 70% of his passes, 206 yards and 2 touchdowns. They're able to move the ball pretty well for the most part. They get the pick 6. It's a low-scoring game because it's in Denver and this defense is tough. Pat Surtain is the best cornerback in the NFL without a doubt. The Chargers have not been able to pass well. This is going to be an all-run heavy game. Then they'll have to rely on the pass. I'm a little bit worried. I don't like that very much. So I'll lock in Denver at home.
Nice.
Moving this along, Pittsburgh Steelers making their way to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. Lots happened in Vegas. Steelers favored in this one by -3, over-under here of 36.5. And what I mean by a lot happening in Vegas is you got Devontae Adams on the trade. Gardner Minshew gets benched in the game against the Broncos. Aiden O'Connell has to come in. It just looked awful for them. They couldn't do anything offensively or defensively. how are your thoughts on this one, especially with the way that Justin Fields played in this last game, which by no means is all necessarily his fault, but wasn't necessarily the best outing?
Definitely wasn't the best outing, and you also have Najee Harris last week running for 14 and 42. I think he has a good game this week on the road. I think they're going to have to rely on trying to get this Najee and Justin Fields combo to work so that they're able, if these are defensive low-scoring games, Najee's going to be able to really control that clock. I think having Aiden O'Connell, I can see T.J. Watt getting at least 2 sacks this weekend. We love him on this show. But like you said, the Raiders are a little bit too much of a mess to love right now. So, you got to go with the Steelers on this one. I think they're going to go crazy. Just shout out to Brock Bowers last week. I put his over in my late window in the Discord. Hits it on the first play, 57-yard touchdown for his first one ever. Aiden O'Connell, I don't think, will have the production of Gardner Minshew at all in this game.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, and I like the Steelers. I know there's some quarterback controversy about whether or not Russell Wilson might come back in, especially considering that they just had a 2-game slide, which is understandable. But I will also say it was weird that George Pickens was on a snap count all of a sudden.
Out of nowhere.
Right? Because they want to increase his productivity and usage overall, which was weird. But you could have seen maybe that was a huge reason why this offense also couldn't move downfield consistently during the game. I will say I'm going with the Steelers. I just think this defense is going to be a lot. The way that this Raiders team has played just has me really worried. Devontae Adams is not going to be in this one, whether or not he's traded this week or not. So I can't lean on them. I don't know if Jacoby Myers can lead this team offensively the way that they need to be led. Moving it along, we have a Sunday night football match, buddy, and it's the Cincinnati Bengals making their way to New York to take on the Giants. Bengals are favored in this one by -3.5. Over under here of 48.5. Seems to be some growing frustration with Jamar Chase, despite his 10 reception, 139 and 1 touchdown game, because they're not able to win games. And you had Joe Burrow come out. He said we're not a championship team.
Yeah, I actually realized I made the typo in the script that he actually also had 2 touchdowns because I forgot that 70-yarder went all the way for it. And you how can you not be mad when you're that good on a team that's 1-4? And here we are. This inability, like you wrote, it's just an inability for them to close these games out. We don't know. We always look at these Cincinnati matchups these last 5 weeks as if it's you as Joe Burrow versus somebody else, and you comes down to the last 2 minutes, you're probably going to win. The Giants' defense, people, are actually pretty good these last few weeks. They had some issue containing Geno last week, but they shut down DK Metcalf. Deontay Banks was on it. He just shut down DK Metcalf. I think he's going to not give Chase trouble, but if this Bengals offensive line is terrible, despite the fact they spent money to fix it, and their defense is even worse. So if Daniel Jones plays a little bit like they did, taking the Giants just for fun, and we're going to live in a world where the Cincinnati Bengals are 1-5.
I can easily see the Giants. No, Giants winning this one. And look, the reality is that the last few weeks, you take week 1 out of the equation for Daniel Jones, and his stats, they're not eye-popping, they're not great, but they're good. At least it shows that he's able to move the ball downfield, not necessarily turn it over. So if you're able to do that against a really bad Bengals defense, like you said, I think it's an easy win for them. That being said, I'm going to go with the Bengals just to defer from you. I like this as like a bet, though. I'd take the money line of the Giants for sure in this one. If I'm a betting,
maybe a little live bet from Sean's. I can feel it rumbling.
Right, stay in the Discord. Take a look come Saturday.
Discord.
But I'll go with the Bengals. I think ultimately if they have to win this game, there's just growing frustration. Zach Taylor, I've seen reports on the hot seat, might get fired in the coming weeks if they're not able to turn this around. So you're playing for your coach right now. You're playing for your team. You got all these weapons. Let's see what this offense can do. I'll lock in the Bengals. Moving this into our Games of the Week section, we have a Thursday night football matchup and an NFC West showdown when the San Francisco 49ers made their way to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. 49ers are favored this one by -3.5, over-under here at 47.5. What are you feeling in this one? Seattle had a shocking loss to the Giants last week.
I may take the rushing yards on both sides for both running backs because Jordan Mason and Kenneth Walker are absolutely on tears of their own. Jordan Mason, crazy best bet last week, 86.5. I'm like, that's a little high. He had no problem hitting that. When it comes to Kyle Shanahan, you can't doubt it. But Sean, the 49ers are 2-3. I don't know, we're talking about a sense of urgency as some 2-3 teams to get back to 500, or people not trying to fall under 500, and you think to yourself, San Francisco's under a lot of pressure. I'm going to take Seattle at home. I think they're devastated. They are underdogs. I kind of love that for Thursday night. But how are you feeling about this game?
I'm looking at it, and I'm feeling like the 49ers in the exact same boat, and now they have to go on the road in a divisional game. And these last few matchups, when they play each other, have been great. They're going to be wearing the throwback uniforms, the Seattle Seahawks. I got to give it to the 49ers, though. They know how good they are. They know how good this team can be. They're the number one passing offense. They're doing all these great things. Jordan Mason had a kind of an off game last week with the fumble. They weren't really able to get going. Then they just sort of imploded upon themselves. So to me, this is like a huge get-right game. You have back-to-back divisional games. If you lose this game, you're down 2 games within your own division. All of a sudden, like you mentioned, you're vastly under 500 at 2-4. You're now not looking like you're going to be the favorites to win. You're the defending NFC champions. And there's so many things that are going on for this. I think the 49ers, they've been here before. We've seen them have some rough starts in the first 6 weeks the last few years. This will be a get-right game for them. I got to lock them in for sure. Moving this right along, we have what should be one of the best games of the week, and as usual, it's stuck in the 1 p.m. slots, when the Washington Commanders make their way to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Now, these are the 2 highest scoring offenses, with the Washington Commanders scoring 31 points per game and the Baltimore Ravens scoring 29 points per game. What are your thoughts going into this one?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, we're going to get an absolute battle here. 52.0 over-under, like you said. Definitely could be the highest scoring game of the weekend. I don't know how the Ravens are favored by 6.5. But, the great thing is that, we are definitely going to see if Jaden Daniels can go up against this kind of playoff kind of pressure. This Ravens team is definitely going to be a playoff team. So I'm excited to see it. I'm going to take the Commanders as underdogs here. I've been loving the underdogs this week. They've also just been coming up, daisies the last couple of weeks. I'm expecting a big game from McLaurin and all 3 of the running backs, McNichols, Eckler, and Brian Robinson Jr. I think that everything is going well for the Commanders and the Ravens. I just don't even know who their number 1 option outside of Zay Flowers is right now.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of Rashad Bateman last week, and I absolutely love that. And hopefully they can continue this. And Lamar Jackson is a great passer when he has the time to pass. And as we saw last week, 4 touchdowns. I'm going to lock in the Baltimore Ravens in this one. They're at home. They've had a great resurgence the last few weeks, considering where we were just talking about them a couple weeks ago. This comeback win in overtime on the road against Cincinnati. The vibes have to be immaculate right now in Baltimore. Sorry, Orioles, but also not sorry. Let's go Yanks. So for me, I just have to say I got to give it to Baltimore. I think this is going to be a tough defense for Washington to move. And while I do think Jaden Daniels is the clear-cut offensive rookie of the year, he's only thrown 4 touchdowns on the season. And his completion percentage is absolutely insane. But last week against Cleveland, he only completed 56% of his passes.
Yeah.
And he dropped back 25 times. So I'm looking at that, and I'm seeing a way that there's for Baltimore to win this. You continue to run it with Derrick Henry, which has been ineffective. Shout out to him, who's just been killing it for Baltimore, like everybody expected, especially in the OT game against the Bengals. So I'm liking them in this one. Moving this along, we got the Detroit Lions making their way to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Lions are favored in this one by -3, over under here 52.5. Lions are coming off of the bye. Cowboys are coming off of a weird win against the Steelers because of the delay.
Yeah.
First ever touchdown on Sunday night and on Monday morning.
And I love that. We love little stats like that, but I did not like the Dak Prescott comeback because I'm like, wow, the Steelers really should have won that game. They're at home this week. They're 3-2, but I think that Detroit is probably one of the biggest threats they're going to have in the NFC. I like them favored here at -3. Everything is going well with the run game for Detroit, and they're going to control the clock this week.
Yep, I'm looking at this, and I like it a lot. I think this is going to be a great game, but for me, I couldn't agree with you more. This Cowboys was a weird win last week, and the comeback, the way that it happened, it wasn't pretty, it wasn't sexy, but it got the job done. But it just feels like they're a small skid away from falling into like a dark hole of a bad record, and that's where I'm worried about them the most. So I'll lock in Detroit. What we saw just before the bye week was that anybody can score at any given time. This offense will put up points week in and week out. Jared Goff will score touchdowns for you by passing them and by catching them, and he won't drop any incompletions or anything like that. So I'll lock in Detroit. as much as I want and need the Cowboys to win this game just for the sake of the NFC North, favoring the Vikings a little bit more. Moving this right along, it's our last game of the week, and it's the Monday Night Football game when the Buffalo Bills make their way to New York to take on the Jets. The Bills are favoring this one by -2.5, over-under here of 42. Now, once again, Robert Saleh, the former head coach of the New York Jets, was fired. That's why he's the former. Currently, defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich will come in as the interim head coach, and Jack and I were joking off camera, but let him just call the defense like it has in a couple of years, and just let Aaron Rodgers run that offense.
Yeah, let him just go Peyton Manning on it. Garrett Wilson had 22 targets last week, 13 catches. They're finally getting things going. Everything you wanted out of Garrett Wilson the whole season, he had it last week. And now, you see Rodgers having 54 pass attempts last week. Definitely hurts anybody with Breece Hall in fantasy, but the Bills are going to have to bring it. They're probably going to have to run the ball big time with James Cook and control it. The Bills have had a good record against the Jets. I think, the fact is, Josh Allen was missing Khalil Shakir a little bit last week. Like we said, Houston really was, as you said, Sean, I kind of outcoached the Bills last week. So, I think that the fact is they can get this win. It's going to probably be a closer game than we expected. MetLife, you never really know in prime time. But Josh Allen had 30% completion last week and 131 yards to the air. I think he's going to get the win this week.
Josh Allen actually hasn't won in New York City against the Jets. I don't know about the Giants. Just really quick, want to put that out there. Since 2021. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying this bodes well for the Jets maybe to win at home. Why? Because this defense is great. Despite this offense putting up numbers of the 2023 Zach Wilson-led New York Jets. 93 points exactly through the first 5 weeks. This defense is playing lights out since its opening 2 weeks. It's been great. It's been playoff level. We saw them absolutely shut down the Vikings in towards the end of the second quarter and through the rest of the game, minus a handful of key moments. The Vikings defense just made the plays when they needed to. I think a lot of what's going on with Rodgers is age and coming off of this injury. I don't think it's really anything more than that. I don't know if I'm at the side that some writers and people are feeling out there that Devontae Adams can't fix this team. I don't know what was really wrong with this team, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen now that the head coach is no longer there, despite the fact that I actually really liked Robert Saleh as a head coach. But I'm locking in the Jets. I just feel like you're coming off this loss in London. Everybody got beaten up in this game. You just fired your head coach. Rodgers was supposed to be the one that fixed it. This team, we've been talking about years. It's under center. It's under center. It's under center. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's under center, and it just hasn't worked. Now's the time. The AFC East is wide open. The Miami Dolphins have a losing record. The Patriots have a losing record. Both those teams are probably out of contention at the moment, at least until maybe Tua's back or something vastly changes with the Patriots. Bills are your only worry. A win now, tied record, win division. So much of this is already at stake in Week 6. I got to give it to the Jets. You got to have a bounce-back game after a 3-interception game for Aaron Rodgers. And his first game ever, throwing 2 interceptions in the first quarter. Shout out Vikings, though.
Shout out Vikings. Undefeated Vikings. Until they're not undefeated, that's how you got to address it.
Yeah, that's how it's going to keep going. But I'm locking the Jets for that one. That's all the time that we have, unless you have anything else for the people that you had to say about this game. But thank you.
No, I don't. I don't. I want them to all follow the Discord and our link in bio, which is at our Instagram, just saying no GWJS. And I want you all to get us in our ears at Spotify, at Just Saying Football, and on YouTube at Just Saying Football. Subscribe so you get our content every week during the NFL season. Thank you guys for checking us out.
Enjoy.